Welcome back to another Zero Context Patreon Strike, advertising my Patreon content one out of context theater moment at a time. I spent most of the month on how to seduce a Slender before I jumped into the first of the Bitten and Bound series, Given. A beautiful woman in wispy silver floated in front of the bedroom door. Long tresses of hair bobbed over her head, complexion a ghostly translucent color, in an elegant gray dress with a high collar that faded away at the bottom. A ghost? Mostly a ghost? Somewhat a ghost? Melody eyeballed her with extreme curiosity as she straightened up. Am I? Melody squawked. You are. Hello, I am Agatha. Smith has told me so much about you. There was a twinkle in her eyes as she soared across the room. Melody flapped her mouth open and shut uselessly as Agatha led her away from the bed towards a massive wardrobe against the wall. But I'd love to know what you want to wear. What I want to... Oh, yeah, I mean, my jeans are a little dusty. Probably need a spit shine and they'll be fine. Melody plucked at her jeans delicately with her fingertips. She tucked away her claws. One of the few things I still have. Melody glanced up from routine to the elegant specter before her. We got a washing machine here. I can toss them in. I can just hang in sweats or something till they're clean. I get that if it were possible, pale to sheet white. Sweats? Like, she shuddered. Sweatpants? Or like jammies? Melody flinched, not wanting to upset the pretty lady floating in front of her. I got some jammies back at my place, but I, kind of, she licked her lips nervously, didn't get a chance to bring 'em. Look, I'm fine with the narration showing us that Melody is terrified of these monsters. What I'm not fine with is her waking up the next morning and casually being accepting of all of this, acting like she hadn't been terrified out of her mind not even 12-ish hours earlier. Well, that's quite alright because we're your family now. Dahlia grabbed up a book from the table next to her chair. Heh, Melody made it sound like a wink honk of a horn. What's funny? Dahlia cocked a brow. Wait, you're serious? You don't know me. Melody couldn't stop Smith from protecting her, but she was rather dependent on him whether she liked it or not. But she didn't even know these people. I don't need to, Dahlia smiled warmly, cracking open the book. Smith trusts you, and that's enough for me. Much like how I dislike the instant love of this series, I hate the instant found family trope that being used here. Found family is a great trope, but usually only when it's built on actual trust and friendship, not taking one look at somebody you found being chased through the woods and deciding, meh, good enough. Melody stomped a foot and stuck her tongue out at him. Smith immediately snatched it before she even realized what she'd done. Her eyes exploded open. Both of them froze. Their hand holding her palms against the fabric of her skirt disintegrated into ash. White static filled the room, crackling and scratching her ears as she saw the slender version of a blush covering her throat and blurry face. Inch by inch, Smith released her tongue from his fingers and removed his arm from the situation. Melody had to wiggle her tongue about in her mouth to rewrite it as it had tried in the panic few seconds it was trapped outside her mouth. Not only is this an odd thing to do, but it's even weirder that somebody had a thought that these characters should do this, actively wrote it out, and decided, yes, peak literature, and kept it in. Upon seeing Melody in such an exhausted state, Smith then proposes an exchange. She explains to her that Slender Men feed off of dreams. However, in the effort of full disclosure, he goes on to say that they usually take and take and take from the victims until they are nothing but a husk. But he's obviously not going to do that to Melody. It would be beneficial if he could skim from the top of her dreams and she could wake feeling fully rested. He also warns that they have to be touching in some way, and she agrees to hold his hand as they do this. I'm not making a face, Melody. I can't make faces. I have no face. This is for sure a line that the author thought of, then wrote down, and kept it in her fucking published novel. Well, I can't do it, Dahlia huffed, tossing her hands out. I'm banned from the city now. Fucking politicians. My mother's company fed the economy for years, supplied everyone from the king of Mailer to the Badlands guilds, and this is the things I get. Not fair. Can't even go grocery shopping in person. How does a whole city survive in the back of a singular company? One that had been intentionally crashed into the ground a good 20 years earlier. Like, that's a miserable economy. Then the entire economic structure of the city should have left every single person desolate and out on the streets, as if this is even remotely true. I'd also like to remind you that the definition of a city puts the population at a minimum of 5,000 people. Not as he grabbed her by the neck once more, ripped her back into the spot against the cold marble wall, and shoved himself against her. His lips were soft. He doesn't even have a face! Where the hell did his lips come from? And this is a sentence I never once thought that I'd have to utter, but here we are. Ah, Mr. Smith, who else would be here harassing my morgue staff? Avarice Blightwood grumbled. Why is this guy everywhere? What exactly is his job again? Like a politician, right? Why the hell is he hanging out in the morgue? Just stay out of my lodge. I've trapped several groups of elves this season with that thing, and I'm not losing my prime hunting ground once I've found yourself a cryptid fucker. Whoa, Melody barked. You don't get to be a cryptid fucker and then be surprised that people call you a cryptid fucker. It took an eternity before he can climb out of bed with drunken fawn legs. Then he mustered up the most of his powers, hoisting her in his arms and dragged both their bodies to the bathroom. She clung to him like a wet blanket, her face stuffed into the crook of his neck. Ah, yes, the most romantic of things. A wet blanket! Smith glanced at Belvine Weathers quickly before answering again. May I bring a hostage? Of course. See you soon. I love how he politely asked permission. Sebastian politely responded, so formal, demure, and mindful. Her rampage was cut short as the blonde, drenched in blood, surged through the curdled blood soup and snatched Melody by the throat. The werewolf wrenched back and forth, but something held her arms below the water. Melody tugged at her shoulder ache. She dislocated them before she'd freed herself. Stupid illusions. It's odd to me what the author chooses to trigger warning tag before each chapter and what she doesn't, because here's this horrific bloody hallucination that Melody is having, yet this wasn't tagged. But for some unholy reason, we were given a trigger warning for sleeping in the previous chapter. The book's possessed. Yes, I can see the book's possessed, but why is the book possessed? Literally not even looking over your own work to check for typos and grammatical errors. Literally wrote it and never looked at it again. I'm not the target, Melody blurted out, tears rolling in her eyes. Smith is. I love the logic here. I want to trap this guy. However, since I can't get to him, I'm going to lure him out using the waitress at the diner he frequents. Like, what? However, they finally broke through the trees and found themselves at the chicken feet of a massive witch's hut. Why the fuck is she named Persephone when she's got a Russian witch's house? Not like the new Fae you exist near in your city of advancements. No, the old Fae, the kind that belonged to the earth and the soil. We were once gods in our own right. So she's got a Greek name, is living in a Russian house, and is born of Saxon legend. Great. The author has no idea what any of this means, does she? Children are products of their environment. I went to the shifter school for a long time with no chance of going anywhere till after Giovanni. Well, and werewolves weren't welcome at the shifter community anymore. So all those kids who were just doing what their parents taught them to do. And when I was stuffed into the general education, my teachers didn't know what to do with me, and the other kids were at a loss. I was a broken kid and going through a lot. It was easier for them to isolate and ignore me than to choose a conversation with me. I don't blame any of them, and I'm not about to vote for them in council elections or anything, but I get it. I would love to hear about this. If this book was actually about any of this belongs in some alpha, beta, omega werewolf story, not 75% through a story about a Slender Man dealing with a witch from his past. Too bad I've already collected your birth certificate, as well as any and all school records, healer's records, and all information pertaining to you, Miss Deathless. Yes, they are in a romantic relationship, but this isn't sweet. It's a little creepy and demented, especially the casual way that he says this. As they laid down for the night before the ball, the house is oddly still. Even though this book is following pretty similar plot beats to the first book in the series, I can't help but note that this ball almost seems as though it was an afterthought that was shoved in at the last second. In Dahlia's and Sebastian's story, there was an actual involvement with them planning for this party. Here with Melody and Smith, it's like, oh, I literally forgot that they were doing that. Your lying mouth, you shameless beast. You belong to me. You've always belonged to me, and I will suffer your insolence no longer. So here's the thing that's bothering me about Edith's plan. Smith was content to watch Melody from afar. It was only when Edith sent her little thing to chase after Melody that literally sent Melody running straight into Smith's arms. Things would have continued on exactly as they had if only Edith hadn't acted. Yet she comes over here and acts upset that Smith now has a girlfriend. Baby, you're the linchpin in all of this. You will pay, he snarled between hard snaps of his jaw. His fangs grew, his face morphed. I am what I eat. His head knocked back painfully as a long howl filled the air. The fog around them shook as Edith struggled to escape his grasp. He only tightened it as he grew. Legs bowed, back arched, vines and thorns grew along his tendrils. A slender wolf appeared in his place as he slammed her into the soil. You know what? This is fun. Let's explore more concepts like Slender Man x Werewolf crossbreeds. As Melody joins her to start chucking things in, Melody questions why this happened at all. They talk about Edith's ambition, but can't really come up with a motive other than I want to be the very best like no one ever was. Melody says that pretty much the only real thing Edith had was the audacity. Smith takes Melody to a fancy restaurant where they dance a little. While they're doing that, he offers up a deal, which is that she become his wife, which is like, I guess that's one way to do it. In his defense, it had been a theme this entire time, so it makes sense that he'd do it now. Alyssa said as she strolled from her solar, one hand on her swollen belly. Her dark green gown was embroidered with gold and apple blossoms. Is telling us about her dress necessary to the continuation of this story? Flustered, I looked down. Moments later, the thralls followed past me. There were 12 males and 12 females, all young and attractive, all clearly nervous. They walked in a line, most of them casting anxious looks at Varric and the vampires behind him. A few kept their heads down. My gut clenched. Surfaces of blood thrall was voluntary, but it was common for poor families to press a younger child into signing up. The vampires treated the thralls with honor, compensated them handsomely, and sent them home unharmed. For the low people, the money a year of service bought could lift an entire family out of poverty, but there was a stigma attached to those who served. A vampire's right wasn't necessarily sexual, but the act of feeding brought euphoria to the vampire, and the pleasure was intense, a dangerous ache. That's not what thrall means, thanks. Did the author read literally a single vampire book before she started writing this? Vesa of Larsatha had so beguiled the old human king he pissed off his queen and risked his throne for the privilege of fucking Vesa whenever he pleased. Larsatha was a shitty little estate on the middle of nowhere, but Vesa had been called the Jewel of Nordor. Wouldn't you? If you could compel a king or queen to love you and lavish you in golden jewels, wouldn't you? Potent as it was, a mere drop of my blood shouldn't have affected her this way, but it had, because she was starving. Roland hadn't beat her, but he'd abused her all the same. At least that narration isn't beating around that bush. He took my hand again. In front of everyone, he kissed my knuckles, tasting my skin with the tip of his tongue. I'm all for a courtly hand kiss, but Jesus fucking Christ, you don't have to lick a girl's hand. A girl, I might add, you met earlier that afternoon. So when my father's delusions convinced him I was trying to steal his throne, he ordered his generals to kill me. My eyes went wide. The general would have been Varric's father, Lauren said with a nod. Why was that assumption made? It's such an odd thing to think. If I were a leader of a kingdom, I'd want the best person for the job, not some Nepo baby. Stay connected by joining Patreon as a free member, which gives you access to the same content you've been enjoying on Tumblr. However, for just $1 a month, you can enjoy my Patreon and gain access to this month's Booksnark, plus enjoy early access to my free daily Snark. Thanks for watching. See you next month.